Good morning, friends! My name is Angie, and I haven't been reading a lot this year. In fact, not really sure I know how to do it anymore. That's a joke. I do still know how to read, I just don't have the brain for it. I don't have the focus for it. And for someone who hasn't been reading a lot this past year, I do have too many books. And so I need to fix that. And I'm gonna fix that in two parts. I would like to do a vlog soon where I read a chapter or read a book that I'm unsure of to see if I'm actually going to keep it or unhaul it. One of those keep it or unhaul kind of vlogs. The only problem is I don't really feel like doing it just yet. But in this video, we're actually going to do an unhaul because while there are a lot of books that I'm still kind of unsure of, there are also a ton of books that I know I want to get rid of. And let's just jump right into them. The first unhaul of this video is The Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. In this book, we are following an author named Zelu. The book opens up with them basically hitting rock bottom. They lost their job in a really public viral way. Their family kind of doesn't look down on them, but has very low expectations for them for several reasons, including ableist reasons, because Zelu is paralyzed. The vibe of the family is kind of just oh, well, just let her write and do her thing because she can't do much else. Whereas her siblings are expected to be engineers, doctors, lawyers, etc., etc. So that's the family dynamic. That's the work dynamic. That's the whole situation with Zelu. Once they hit rock bottom, they write this book called Rusted Robots, and it is an instant classic. It is a huge hit, and that's as far as I got because I didn't like this book and I DNF'd it. And the reason why I DNF'd it is because I just really didn't like the writing style. It felt too heavy-handed, question mark. There wasn't enough emotion in the text for me. It just felt so and especially in regards to the rusted robot part of the story, it just felt bad because this book is told in two parts. We have Zelu's life, and then we have excerpts from the rusted robot. And I hate when books do this shit, especially when they're saying that this text, this book within a book is the best book ever. And then they give you an excerpt and then it's the most go girl, give us nothing kind of text. It takes me out of the story because it's this is the instant classic bestseller. This? Are you sure about that? Because the story stinks. And so when a book references a book within a book, I actually prefer when they don't give us any of the context because then we can use our imagination to make it as good and as phenomenal as possible. But when you tell me that something is amazing and phenomenal and groundbreaking, and then you hand me an example of what this phenomenal groundbreaking thing is, and it sucks, then I don't believe you anymore and I don't want to continue with the story. And that's why I didn't continue with the story. In relation to the Rusted Robots, I also didn't love how heavy-handed it was in the way that this is kind of spoilers, but we flash back to when Zelu breaks her spine and is in the hospital and she meets this kid who has two broken legs. And when he's talking to her, he's man, I'm so tired of these casts. I'm so tired of blah, 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 blah. I just feel like a rusted robot. And it's okay. First of all, that doesn't even really make sense within the context of this conversation. But second of all, okay, we get it. It just felt two connecty dots for me in a way that wasn't satisfying, in a way that felt forced, and in a way that just was not great for the eyeballs or for the brains. Next we have Generation Dread by Britt Ray. This is a book that I've mentioned a lot on this channel because it's been on several of my yearly TBRs, and I finally dedicated the time to pick it up in 2026, and I did end up DNFing it about 50 pages in. It just didn't really give me anything either, if I'm being totally honest. The context for this is that this is a non-fiction science and also self-help book about finding purpose in an age of climate anxiety. I felt the first 50 or so pages really didn't give you anything new. And my fear was that it was going to continue to just regurgitate facts that were already well known. At least well known to me. Maybe this book would serve someone who's not already climate anxious and not already looking into that shit. But if you've been paying attention to climate shit for a while, this is really standard facts that you can find on like any Instagram infographic, to be honest. So it just didn't feel like a good use of my time to continue reading it. Next DNF is Mrs. Death by Selena Godin. This was a book that I was very much looking forward to, and again, it was just the writing style that didn't work for me. It's written kind of like free versy, spoken word poetry kind of vibes, and I do think that the author themselves is a poet, so it does make sense why their writing style reflects that. And I will say, like, the first couple of chapters, it worked for me. And I was like, oh, this is a fun stylistic choice. This is interesting. This is unique. And then I realized the entire book was that. And I was like, oh, I don't think I want to continue reading this. Like, for lack of a better word, the gimmick was interesting until I realized the entire book was the gimmick. And I was like, oh, this would have been cooler or more effective to me as a reader if this was like thrown in every once in a while and like the rest of it is just like normal narrative. The fact that the entire book is this is just like not really my thing. So another DNF, another unhaul. The next unhaul is City of Rats by Kopi. This is a book that I picked up semi-recently and I thought it was really interesting. It's like a book told in the perspective of rats in Paris, and that seemed really fun and that seemed really cool. And then I like went on Storygraph to just kind of like check out the vibe of this book. According to several reviews on Storygraph, there's like a scene where a child is being sexually assaulted and like the rats are in the background cheering, ? And yeah, didn't really want to read this anymore after reading that. Like, it just, yeah. And so I'm gonna take the L of the like $15 that I spent on this, and I'm just gonna unhaul it. Next we have The Second Death of Locke by V.L. Bovellino. This is a medieval fantasy following two characters called Gray and Kier. And in this world, there is like a magic system where people are like bonded and have to like work together. One half of the duo is like the magic supplier, and then the other half is like the magic doer, and like they can't operate without the other. And so that's what Gray and Kier are to each other, but they are also lifelong friends and also soulmates. And I really enjoyed that aspect of the book, the like romantic medieval fantasy yearning kind of vibes. I wasn't super engaged with the like political drama of it all, and I feel like I could have been if it was handled a little differently, because I feel like the first half of the book, we're just like thrown into this world. We don't have any context. We're just like, there's a war, there's these people, there are soldiers, whatever. And it's just like kind of like vibes o'clock. And then the second half of the book introduces like the actual political like landscape, and it's kind of like info dumpy in the way that you need to be completely caught up with everything going on in this world so that we can move the plot forward. And it just felt like an info dump. That's a perfect word to describe it as. That being said, this wasn't the worst book I've read. You know, I actually like genuinely enjoyed it. Maybe I gave it like 3.5, perhaps even 4 stars. And in any other case, I probably would have kept it because it was like good enough. But then I read The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow, which has a very similar dynamic between its two protagonists. And I feel like that book handled it so much better and was way more effective and like completely rocked my shit. And so after I finished The Everlasting, I was like, well, I don't need to keep this anymore, because if I want to revisit a story that has like this level of yearning and this level of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Ride or die, perhaps, between two characters, I know I can get that in The Everlasting. Like, I know I can get a little bit of it in The Second Death of Locke, but if I really want to get into it, I would turn to The Everlasting, so I don't need this one in my life. Next we have The Classic Works of Edgar Allan Poe. This is a short story collection of Edgar Allan Poe's work. I think a few years ago I attempted to do like a vlog where I read a short story every day, because I believe that there was like 31 stories in here, or at least almost 31. So it was going to be like a Halloween-y kind of vibe. I tried to tabby a lot. You can see I was like really trying to make something happen here, but I don't remember if it really like held my attention. And I feel like each story I read was like 3 stars or under, and it like wasn't getting any better than that. And so yeah, I don't really care to continue this. it's not really gonna change my life if I try to read it. Like, truthfully, the only reason why I even picked this up was because I had that vlog in mind, and then I lost the footage, so I never finished the vlog, I never finished the book, and now I don't really have any motivation to like continue to read this book, because I truly just picked it up for like content purposes. I didn't really pick it up because I was like feeling compelled or engaged in any type of way. So another L for the stacks. Next, we have The Stand by Stephen King. This is another book that I read for a vlog, and I do remember liking this book well enough. This book takes place in a time where there is a virus that sweeps the nation, and it's very reminiscent of like the COVID pandemic. In that way, I found this book very compelling, especially because Stephen King had written this several decades before 2020, and so it was just like kind of neat in a very depressing way to see like the parallels of like the trajectories of each given society, both fictional and like real life, what we're living in today. And to be honest, I was mostly keeping this around as like a trophy, because like this is a massive freaking book to finish, and I was kind of proud of myself for sticking it through. But again, not something I'm going to return to, not something that like completely rocked my world. And what's the point of keeping trophies if they're just going to collect dust? So we're going to unhaul it, and hopefully this could be someone else's trophy. I like truly don't give a fuck. Another book that really did nothing for me is The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre by Philip Fracassi. I got this as part of one of my Aardvark books, not sponsored. Don't know why they won't. Call them out on my behalf. This book follows, I want to say her name is Grace. She is an older woman who lives in this retirement home, and like one day like one of her friends die under mysterious circumstances, and they're like, that's weird. And then like another person dies under mysterious circumstances, and that's weird. And then Grace decides to like take it upon herself to try and solve the mystery, because like she's a huge like mystery novel nut. It's your standard amateur detective thriller kind of situation. I think the reveal did surprise me, but surprised me in a bad way, because it was like one of those reveals where the person like comes out, takes off their Scooby-Doo mask, and they're like, I'm the one who freaking did it. And then you as the reader are like, wait, who are you? And when did you get here? Because this person was so inconsequential throughout the entire plot, throughout the story, throughout the community, it just felt like random. And you know, when they did their whole thing, I was like, okay. It would have made more sense if it was like literally anyone else doing these murders, but like for some reason Philip decided it should be like the lunch lady. It wasn't the lunch lady, because I don't think there's a lunch lady character in this book, but it's like the equivalent of like a lunch lady who shows up every Tuesday. Like that's how irrelevant this character was to like everyone's life in this story. Not to say that lunch ladies are irrelevant, but just like in terms of someone who is connected to these murders and who would have like a genuine motive, they did not have a genuine motive. Or maybe they did, but it didn't work for me and it didn't convince me. So it just felt like kind of like super. The next book we're unhauling is another book club flop. This is What We Can Know by Ian McEwan. This book was a huge snooze fest. It was so dense. It was so meandering. It put me to sleep several times, but I persevered and I actually finished this one, and I actually went to book club, and I almost fought a guy because he was being really disrespectful about like the women in this book. And so got a lot of bad vibes tied to this book just generally, but also like as a text, it wasn't the most compelling thing to me. Again, it put me to sleep several times. It is a book that has two timelines. The first is 2014, where we're following a poet and their like secret poem that they wrote for their wife. And it's like more specifically about a day, a moment, a dinner, where the details of this dinner have been kind of lost in time, which is ironic because in 2014 and in our day and age, everything is documented so easily. So the second timeline actually takes place in 2119, where we follow a historian who is trying to figure out what happened during that dinner, and more specifically, what happened to that poem. And that part of the story was really interesting to me. I think it's really fascinating to write about the present time, but as someone who is from the future. And in a lot of ways, that part of the book reminded me of this like short story. I think it's called The Nasarima, but basically the short short story is like an anthropologist's report of this culture that has been lost to time, and they're like pinpointing all of these weird little like rituals that they've learned about this culture. And you go through this entire story and it's like the most bizarre shit that you've ever read, and then you get to the end of it and you find out that Nasarima is actually just American backwards. So all of this weird shit that this anthropologist has written about is actually just things that we do on a daily basis. So like it's a really fun way to kind of like get out of your head and like look at like our present culture, our present society in a different way. And I liked how it was done here. The only thing I didn't like about this book is actually several things, but the only thing I didn't like about that aspect is, again, it's very meandering. It's very hard to get to. Once we get like a good little nugget of information, it feels really satisfying, but like to actually get to this point is a lot of work, and it's really frustrating, and it's a huge snooze fest. This is a short unhaul. This is Two Smithereens by Rosalind Drexler. In this book, we're following a woman who gets convinced to be a pro wrestler, and it was fine. I got about halfway through, but I just really didn't like the writing style. It felt like work to get through this writing style, and like, why am I gonna force myself to read a book that I'm not enjoying? So it was a DNF, it's an unhaul. Next, we are unhauling The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is a thriller story about a missing girl, and with most thriller stories about a missing girl, there's family secrets, there's secrets, and there's even more secrets. And it's also just a book that doesn't really have a lot of rereadability to it. Once you get to the secret, once you get to the core of it, it's like, cool. So there's no reason for me to keep this. I need to stop getting thriller books off of Book of the Month and or Aardvark. Like, I enjoy thriller books enough, but like they're never super satisfying to me, and they're like rarely ever worth keeping on my shelves after I finish reading it. I just like that they're fun and quick to read. Then we have The Saturday Night Ghost Club by Craig Davidson. This is a book that has been sitting on my shelves for years. I actually think I bought it at a Sam's Club when they used to sell books, and I've never picked it up, and I never feel compelled to pick it up. I think the cover is really cool, and that's about it, and I don't really care about much else. And so I think we just have to finally get it out of my life and just put it somewhere else. And we're also going to get rid of Kill the Beast by Sarah Swift. I read exactly one chapter of this and I didn't like the vibe. I didn't like the tone. I didn't like the writing style. I'm learning a little bit more about my fantasy taste, and this book helped me learn that I don't care for like fantasy novels where there are like trolls and goblins and things like that. Like when there are like humanoid creatures, not really my jam. If we're getting into fantasy, I'm more interested in like humans who have magic powers. I can get into a dragon book as long as the dragon is not like a personified character. Like it needs to be giant lizard, not sidekick friend, if that makes sense. And I think this book very much falls under the category of like humanoid personified animals who are sidekick friends, and I don't care. And in some ways I kind of should have seen that coming because there is a furry on the cover. This is another Aardvark flop for me. That being said, they should still sponsor me, even though they have given me some flops in my lifetime. Like, what's the harm in throwing a coin this way every once in a while? You know what I mean? And then finally, the last book we are unhauling is Vampires at Sea by Lindsay Mirbaum. Again, a book that was totally fine, but a book that I don't see myself returning to, and so like, why the freak am I gonna keep it? This is a book about two vampires who are on vacation. They're on a cruise ship and they're having some marital issues, and so they decide to go on this cruise ship to try and fix those issues, and that falls through because one side of the couple becomes enchanted by an alluring and possibly magical non-binary social media influencer named Heaven. And when that happens, Rebecca's reality capsizes and her true nature is unleashed. It is very much a story about a failing relationship. It's very much a story about growing out of a relationship, and in that ways I think it's really interesting. In other ways, I don't think they needed to be vampires. I think it could have just been a story about human people beings. And so the like gimmick of the vampires just like felt too gimmicky, I think, in my opinion. But overall, it is a fun book. It is a quick read. I do recommend this, especially as like a little summer read. Like, this could be fun. Again, not really a book that I see myself returning to and not really a book that I really care about. So like, why would I keep it? And that's it. A lot of books that we're unhauling and yet didn't really make a dent in the space behind me. So we're gonna have to do a little bit more work. We're gonna have to do a little bit more research, and maybe that vlog will be coming to you soon. But thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great day. I hope all of your projects are going well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!